The 250 Years of War on Africa and the Slave Trade. The transatlantic slave trade was more than a brutal economic venture. It was an orchestrated, centuries-long assault on Africa that left scars on its people and lands. Often minimized as mere trade, this war on Africa, waged over 250 years, was led by European powers: Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and England, with the deliberate goal of extracting Africa's people, resources, and future. Backed by royal charters, treaties, and alliances, this war devastated African societies, removing millions of lives, cultures, and possibilities. Here's how this war unfolded, by the numbers and its lasting impact. The European powers at war with Africa. This war was waged primarily by 4 European powers, who aggressively competed for dominance in the transatlantic slave trade. Portugal and Spain were among the earliest to enter Africa in the 15th century, initially seeking gold, but quickly turning to the capture of people as slave labor demand increased in the Americas. England and the Netherlands joined by the late 16th and early 17th centuries, establishing their own systems of capture, transport, and labor exploitation that would become some of the largest in scale. These nations saw African people not as humans, but as commodities in an economic strategy to build wealth in the New World. With official permissions and treaties, they fortified coastal outposts, supplied weapons to instigate local conflicts, and fueled the systematic capture and forced migration of African people. The numbers. How the war played out. The transatlantic slave trade involved an estimated 36,000 voyages from Africa to the Americas. Here's what those numbers reveal. Total captured. Approximately 12.5 million Africans were captured and forced onto slave ships. Of these, an estimated 10.7 million survived the Middle Passage to arrive in the Americas, while millions more perished en route. Average voyage. Each voyage carried around 347 enslaved Africans, a staggering number packed into unsanitary, overcrowded ships with a single purpose: human profit. Frequency of voyages. On average, there were 10 voyages per month, or about 2.5 voyages per week. This consistent movement of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic highlights how entrenched and organized this system was. The machinery of war. The transatlantic slave trade was a war on Africa not only in the lives it took, but in the systems it established to perpetuate violence. Raids and alliances. European powers often collaborated with local African leaders to supply captives, exacerbating conflicts and destabilizing regions. Wars and raids were fueled by the influx of European weapons, creating a vicious cycle of violence to meet the European demand for slaves. Fortified outposts. Along Africa's western coast, Europeans built over 60 fortified trading posts where captives were held in unspeakable conditions. These posts became centers of human trafficking, where Africans were brutalized, inspected, and forcibly separated from their families before enduring the Middle Passage. Institutionalized systems. In the Americas, enslaved Africans were commodified under legal systems that stripped them of rights, and they were counted in economic terms. The wealth generated by this forced labor enriched Europe and fueled the expansion of colonial empires. The lasting impact. Africa's loss. The effects of this war resonate to this day. By removing so many individuals, the trade not only depopulated regions, but also tore apart communities, erased cultures, and destabilized entire societies. This war drained Africa of its human capital, severely impacting its economic and social development for centuries. The consequences of this systematic assault are woven into the fabric of African, European, and American histories. Modern-day descendants of the enslaved continue to experience the repercussions, as societies worldwide grapple with the enduring legacies of the slave trade, colonialism, and racial inequality. Remembering Africa's resilience. While this story is one of unspeakable suffering, it is also one of resilience. Despite centuries of violence, Africa's rich cultures, languages, and traditions have endured, a testament to the strength of those who survived and those who resisted. Today, as we remember this history, it's essential to recognize the truth. The transatlantic slave trade was an intentional, organized war on Africa, waged by the world's then most powerful nations. As we reflect on these 250 years, we can better understand the weight of this legacy and work towards a future where history serves as a guide toward justice, equality, and collective healing.